You know that sinking feeling when you see a name pop up on your phone, and you just know it's not going to be good? That's what hit me when I saw my mom, Marie, calling. I'm Sean, 31 years old, and if there's one thing you should know about me, it's that I've been on my own since I turned 18. College, paid for it myself. Job, worked my way up. Support from my parents? Let's just say that was a pipe dream. Marie doesn't call for a chat. She's not the type to ask about my day or how I'm doing. If she's calling, it's because there's a problem, and 9 times out of 10, it's not her problem. It's mine now. So, I answered, "Hey, Mom, what's up? Oh, Sean, how's work? Still doing that? Accounting or whatever it is?" Her tone was casual, but forced, like she was trying to warm me up for something big. It took everything in me not to sigh. Yes, still in accounting. "What do you need?" I cut to the chase because there's no use dancing around it with her. "It's your sister Layla. She's in trouble." Of course she was. My younger sister, Layla, 28, has a track record longer than a CVS receipt. There was the time she borrowed my car without asking and crashed it while scrolling through her phone, or when she convinced me to co-sign her first apartment lease, only to ditch the rent 3 months in, leaving me to clean up her financial mess. But this time I could tell it wasn't just a typical Layla blunder. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, bracing myself for the worst. "She's in debt." "A lot of debt," Marie said, her voice trembling. $45,000. I froze, letting the number hang in the air. 45 grand. How does someone even get that far in the hole? She's been borrowing money she doesn't have, and now, Marie hesitated, lowering her voice, it's not just credit card companies. There are other people involved. Dangerous people. It wasn't panic I felt. It was exhaustion. Because, of course, it wasn't just credit cards. Of course it was worse. And, of course, my mother was calling me to clean it up. "Sean, you need to help her," Marie said, her tone shifting from concerned to insistent. "You're her brother. You've done so well for yourself. You can pay it off." I let out a short laugh. "Mom, I didn't borrow the money. Why would I pay it off?" "Because she's family," Marie snapped. "She's your sister and she's struggling." Struggling. That word rattled in my brain like loose change. No, Layla wasn't struggling. She was reckless. She spent money she didn't have on designer handbags and fancy vacations, and when the bills came due, she panicked. Every time she screwed up, someone bailed her out, usually me. And apparently, that someone was supposed to be me again. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not paying her debt." Marie's silence was deafening. Then came the guilt trip, as predictable as the sunrise. "Sean, she's your sister. Family helps each other. Do you want her to get hurt? Is that what you want?" I gripped my phone tighter. "Mom, she's 28 years old. An adult. She knew what she was doing. Maybe it's time she finally faces the consequences." "She's not as strong as you," Marie shot back. "You've always had it together. She hasn't. You can afford to help her. It's the least you can do after everything we've done for you." I felt my blood boil. Done for me? Like what? Making me pay rent the second I turned 18? Refusing to help with my college tuition? "Yeah, thanks for all that support, Mom." "Look," I said, my voice tight. "I've helped her before, and every time she's taken advantage of it. I'm not doing it again. I'm done." Marie's tone turned icy. "If you don't help her, we'll have no choice but to cut you off. Do you really want that?" I laughed, not out of amusement, but sheer disbelief. "Cut me off from what? You don't support me. You've never supported me. Do whatever you want, but I'm not paying her debt." And with that, I hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, my hands shaking. Part of me hoped that would be the end of it, that they'd finally get the message. But deep down, I knew better. Marie wasn't one to back down easily, and I was right. That phone call was just the beginning. I should have known my mom wouldn't let it go. Marie is nothing if not persistent, especially when it comes to things she thinks she's entitled to. I didn't hear from her for a couple of days after our phone call, which should have felt like a reprieve. Instead, it felt like the eye of the storm, a quiet before the chaos. And the chaos came. At first, it started small. Texts. Simple messages like, "I don't understand how you could let your sister go through this." Then, "You know the kind of people Layla owes money to. They're dangerous, Sean. I can't sleep at night worrying about her." I ignored them. What else could I do? It wasn't like answering would magically make $45,000 appear or change Layla's pattern of self-destruction. But ignoring only seemed to fan the flames. Marie switched to voicemails, where she really leaned into the guilt. Her tone, like she was on the verge of tears in everyone. "Sean, I can't believe you're being so heartless. Layla is your sister. She might not survive this if you don't help her. Is that what you want? To lose her? I don't think I can live with myself if something happens to her because of you." I played the message twice just to be sure I heard it right. Because of me? No. Layla's choices were Layla's responsibility. I wasn't the one who spent money like it was Monopoly cash, but apparently that logic was lost on my family. The next person to chime in was my dad, Frank. Now, Frank's not much of a talker when it comes to family drama. He usually just nods along to whatever Marie says and stays out of it, but not this time. He left me a voicemail that started out calm, almost businesslike. "Hey, Sean, just checking in. Hope you're doing okay." I knew there was a but coming. "But listen, I know your mom's been coming on a little strong. You know how she gets. Thing is, this is serious. Layla's in deep, and we can't do this without you. You've always been the dependable one, the strong one. Don't let us down now." That phrase, the dependable one, set me off. It's like they were proud of how much they've leaned on me over the years, like it was some kind of badge of honor. It wasn't. It was exhausting. But it didn't stop there. Oh no, my parents decided to recruit the entire extended family to their cause. I started getting random calls and texts from people I hadn't spoken to in years. First it was Uncle Mitch. "Hey Sean, it's your Uncle Mitch. Long time no talk, huh? How's life treating you?" I knew where this was going. "Pretty good, Uncle Mitch. What's up?" "Well, you know, family's important, Sean. And, your sister, she's going through a rough patch. I heard about what's happening, and I just thought maybe you could help her out. It's what family does, right?" I couldn't hold back the frustration in my voice. "Uncle Mitch, did my mom ask you to call me?" "Well, she might have mentioned it," he said, laughing awkwardly. "Yeah, I'm not paying Layla's debt. It's not my responsibility," he sputtered. "But she's your sister." "Exactly. Which is why she should stop treating me like an ATM and start fixing her own messes." You'd think that would have been the end of it. It wasn't. Next, Aunt Karen called. Then, Cousin Sarah. Then someone who claimed to be a family friend, but who I hadn't seen since I was 10. They all had the same script. Layla's struggling, and I'm the only one who can save her. I started to feel like I was in a weird family intervention, but instead of helping me, they were all pressuring me to shell out $45,000 for Layla's mistakes. And the worst part? None of them even tried to understand my side. When I said no, they'd counter with, "But she's your sister." Like that was supposed to make me suddenly forget all the times she'd screwed me over. The real kicker came when Marie started a full-blown smear campaign. She went on the family group chat, the one I left years ago, and told everyone I was selfish, ungrateful, and had abandoned my family for my fancy city life. I found out about it when my cousin Jake, one of the few family members I actually like, called me. "Hey Sean, just a heads up. Your mom's been saying some wild stuff about you in the group chat. She told Aunt Karen you said Layla deserves whatever happens to her." I was furious, not because Aunt Karen might believe it, but because Marie was outright lying to make herself look like the victim. "I didn't say anything like that," I told Jake. "Yeah, I figured," he said. "Don't worry, man. I've got your back. This whole thing is ridiculous." It felt good to have someone on my side, but the drama didn't stop there. Layla, who had been suspiciously quiet up until now, finally made her move. She sent me a text late one night. "I can't believe how selfish you're being, Sean. You know I'm in serious trouble and you're just sitting there doing nothing. You're supposed to be my brother." I didn't even know how to respond to that. Selfish? Me? Layla's entire life has been a series of bad decisions with me as her safety net. I decided not to reply. What was the point? The next morning, she hit me with another text. "You have the money. Stop acting like it's such a big deal. Just pay it off, and I'll pay you back when I can." That was rich. Layla couldn't even pay her own rent, let alone $45,000. I ignored that one too. But ignoring her didn't work. She spiraled, sending long, rambling messages about how I was abandoning her and didn't understand what it was like to struggle. Then she dropped the bomb. "Mom and Dad always said you'd come around eventually. Guess they were wrong." That one hit differently, not because it made me rethink anything, but because it confirmed what I'd suspected all along. This wasn't just Layla's mess. My parents had been feeding her this narrative for years, convincing her that no matter how bad things got, I'd always bail her out. And that was when I realized just how toxic this whole situation had become. By the time Layla's text about my selfishness rolled in, I had already decided I was done engaging. Ignoring her and my parents seemed like the best option. But if there's one thing my family excels at, it's pushing boundaries until you have no choice but to respond. A week after I stopped replying to her texts, I got a call from my bank. "Mr. Daniels," the fraud department agent began, "we detected suspicious activity on your account." That sentence alone was enough to make my stomach drop. "What kind of suspicious activity?" "Someone attempted to access your account using forged documentation," the agent explained. "They tried to change your contact information and withdraw a large sum of money. Fortunately, our system flagged the attempt, and we froze your account as a precaution." The words barely registered. Forged documentation? Withdraw money. My mind raced. It wasn't hard to figure out who was behind this. "Do you know who did it?" I asked, my voice tight. "We can't disclose specifics," the agent replied, "but based on the information provided, it appears to be someone close to you." Someone close to me. They didn't need to say more. I knew it was Layla. The timing was too convenient. Her texts, her accusations, and now this. It couldn't be anyone else. Anger bubbled up in my chest, sharp and searing. Trying to guilt me into paying her debt was one thing, but forging documents to steal from me, that was an entirely different level. I didn't waste any time. That evening, I drove straight to her apartment, fueled by a mix of rage and disbelief. When she opened the door, she looked surprised to see me. "Sean, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone defensive. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "You tried to steal from me." Her eyes widened for a split second before she crossed her arms. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't," I said, my voice low but firm. "The bank flagged your little stunt. They told me someone forged documents to access my account. Do you even realize how serious this is?" She let out a dramatic sigh, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Oh, relax. It's not like I actually got anything." For a moment I was speechless. "Relax?" I repeated, incredulous. "You committed fraud, Layla." "That's a crime. What was I supposed to do?" she shot back, her voice rising. "You refused to help me. You left me no choice." "No choice?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Layla, you had every choice. You could have taken responsibility for your mess. You could have faced the consequences like an adult. But instead, you tried to steal from me?" She rolled her eyes, completely unbothered. "Mom and Dad said you'd come around eventually. They told me you'd get over your little tantrum if I pushed hard enough." I blinked, stunned by the audacity. "Little tantrum?" "Yeah," she continued, doubling down instead of backing off. "You're being so dramatic about all this. You're supposed to help family, Sean. That's what you've always done. You're the one with the money. I don't see what the big deal is." It wasn't frustration I felt at that moment. It was rage. Years of being the dependable one, the problem solver, the safety net for everyone's bad decisions boiled over. This wasn't just about Layla's recklessness. It was about years of my parents enabling her, feeding her delusion that I existed solely to clean up her messes. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice low but trembling with anger. "You've crossed a line, Layla. A big one, and there's no coming back from this." "Oh, please," she said dismissively. "Stop being so dramatic. Nothing happened." "That's where you're wrong," I said, stepping toward the door. "Something did happen. You tried to steal from me. And if you ever do anything like this again, I won't just cut you off. I'll make sure the police know exactly what you did." "Grow up, Layla. You're not a child anymore." I didn't wait for her response. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. My hands were shaking by the time I got to my car. How had it come to this? How had my family gotten so toxic that my own sister thought stealing from me was an acceptable solution? I wanted to believe that was the end of it, but I knew better. The next day, my mom called. I didn't pick up, but she left a voicemail. Her voice was sharp, dripping with anger. "Sean, your sister told me what happened. I can't believe you threatened her like that. She's struggling, and instead of helping her, you're making things worse. You should be ashamed of yourself." I played the voicemail twice, each word sinking in deeper. Layla had tried to steal from me, and somehow I was the bad guy. I didn't respond. What was the point? They weren't going to see reason, and I wasn't about to explain myself to people who refused to acknowledge the truth. But I wasn't going to let it slide, either. That same day, I called my bank and tightened every layer of security on my accounts. Passwords, two-factor authentication, the works. I wasn't about to give Layla or anyone else another opportunity to pull something like that. For a few days, things were quiet again. Too quiet. And when I came home from work one evening and saw my parents' car parked in my driveway, I knew the quiet was about to end. I parked behind them and sat in my car for a minute, mentally preparing myself for whatever nonsense was about to come my way. This wasn't going to be an apology or an attempt to make amends. No, this was going to be another round of guilt, manipulation, and emotional blackmail. When I finally got out of the car, my mom was standing by the front door, arms crossed, her face set in that familiar look of disapproval. My dad was a few steps behind her, looking down at the ground like he'd rather be anywhere else. "We need to talk," my mom said the moment I was within earshot. "I don't think we do," I replied, brushing past her to unlock the door. And just like that, round 2, or was it 3, of their campaign began. As expected, my mom followed me inside, her footsteps heavy with determination. My dad trailed after her, silent as ever. I didn't even bother turning around as I headed for the kitchen. If they were here to lecture me, I might as well be comfortable. "Sean," my mom started, her tone sharp, "this nonsense has gone on long enough. We're your parents. Layla is your sister. This isn't how families behave." I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "Oh, really? Because last I checked, family doesn't steal from each other, or lie, or manipulate. So don't lecture me about family, Mom." She looked taken aback, but only for a moment. Then she recovered, launching into her usual guilt trip. "Layla is struggling, Sean. She made a mistake. She's not as strong as you. She's your sister. It's your responsibility to help her." I set the glass down with more force than I intended. "No, Mom. It's not my responsibility. She's 28 years old, an adult who has made nothing but bad decisions her entire life. And every time you and Dad have bailed her out, you've taught her that she never has to take responsibility for anything because someone else will always fix it. Not this time. Do you know what it would do to her if something happened?" She shot back, her voice rising. "How would you live with yourself if she got hurt? How do you live with yourselves?" I snapped. "You've spent years enabling her. Years. And now, instead of holding her accountable, you're trying to make me the bad guy because I refuse to be her safety net. You created this mess, not me." For the first time, my dad spoke up. "Sean, this isn't about taking sides. It's about fixing things. We just want what's best for everyone. Can't you meet us halfway?" I laughed bitterly. "Halfway? Are you serious? Paying off $45,000 of her debt is halfway. What's Layla's contribution to this so-called compromise? What has she done to fix this?" My dad didn't answer. He just shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. "You're being stubborn," my mom said, her tone harsh. "If you don't help her, we'll have no choice but to cut ties with you. No holidays? No family gatherings. Nothing." I stared at her, wondering if she really thought that was a threat. "Mom, I've been on my own since I was 18. You cutting me off is like firing someone who already quit." Her face turned red, and I could tell she was on the verge of exploding. But before she could say anything else, my dad gently touched her arm. "Lorraine, stop. This isn't helping." I could feel the anger boiling inside me, years of frustration bubbling to the surface. Every sacrifice I'd made, every time I'd stepped up when they wouldn't, every instance of them putting Layla first, it all slammed into me at once. I pushed off the counter, walked to the front door, and swung it open. "Get out." My mom blinked, stunned. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Get out. This conversation is over. You're not going to guilt me into paying Layla's debt, and you're not going to manipulate me into feeling bad about it. Unless you have something productive to say, you can leave." She opened her mouth to argue, but my dad gently pulled her toward the door. "Come on, Lorraine. Let's go." She glared at me as she walked past, her voice dripping with venom. "You'll regret this, Sean. Mark my words." I shut the door behind them and leaned against it, letting out a long breath. The house was quiet again, finally. But the quiet didn't last. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. At first, I thought it was junk, just another credit card offer or some random promotion. But when I opened it, I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was from a lawyer. My parents were threatening legal action, claiming I had a moral obligation to support my family. They wanted me to pay Layla's debt, and they were actually willing to take me to court over it. I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. My own parents were threatening to sue me because I wouldn't clean up their mess. It was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. I called my lawyer immediately. After explaining the situation, he chuckled. "Sean, they don't have a leg to stand on. Let them file if they want. It'll get laughed out of court." Sure enough, nothing ever came of their threat. But it was a wake-up call, a reminder of just how toxic my family had become. That same day, I made a decision. I blocked their numbers, deleted them from my contacts, and unfollowed them on every social media platform. I even blocked Layla, just to be safe. For the first time in years, I felt free. I reached out to a few relatives I trusted, like my cousin Jake, to explain what had happened. "They seriously tried to sue you?" Jake said, his disbelief echoing through the phone. "Not yet," I replied. "But they threatened to." Jake sighed. "That's insane. Honestly, good for you for cutting them off. They sound toxic as hell." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "They are, and I'm done." The weeks that followed were quiet, eerily so. I spent the holidays with friends, my chosen family, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells. Every now and then, Jake would give me updates. Last I heard, Layla had filed for bankruptcy, and my parents were still spinning their sob story to anyone who would listen. But I didn't care. I had moved on. Cutting them off wasn't easy. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. But looking back, I know it was the right one. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away, and that's exactly what I did. Story 2. My house launched this entire story. Not some estate, mind you, but a good 3-bedroom house I had been working on to pay off for the past 10 years. It was my haven, my earned slabs of calm, not expensive decor or large yard, just a cozy area where I could relax after a demanding day. Then there is my sister Jenny and her husband Alex, always preaching about leaving the 9-to-5 grind and pursuing some great adventure. They are the live your best life sort. I considered them little as I thought it was only rhetoric. Everybody wants to explore the globe and leave their work, right? But reality usually sets in. Obligations mount up, bills must be paid. Not with Jenny and Alex, though. They did it as it is. After deciding to spend a year traveling the globe, sold their house, and moved their 2 children, Emma, 7, and Lucas, 5. They calculated they had made a killing on the sales, enough to live comfortably even working odd jobs along the road. I watched things play out with a mixture of entertainment value and worry. Not quite a stroll in the park as traveling with 2 small children. It calls for steadiness, preparation, factors that didn't seem to influence their snap choice. Hey, though, it was their life. A few months ahead, fast forward. When Jenny calls from home, I start to shiver. Since they left, I had not heard from her much. Only the odd Instagram picture highlighting their amazing life. Although I assumed this call would be the same, I knew something was off the instant I picked up. Jenny sounded hurried, even agitated. As it happens, their great journey had not precisely gone as expected. 2 months of blowing away their money, fancy hotels, restaurant dinners, and a casual attitude toward spending had sapped their money more quickly than they had projected. They now found themselves imprisoned. Not enough money to keep on vacation, but also no want to settle down and get another place. What then ought they to do? They contact to ask whether they may move in with their 2 children, naturally free of rent. For 10 months, my jaw came almost to the ground. While this was my house and space, I love my sister. For 10 years, I had not busted my hump in order to have 4 more people disturb my haven. I also appreciated my schedule, my peaceful time. My worst dream was 2 children running about with the continual noise and anarchy. Trying to gently let her down, I said the house was too small, and I wasn't ready for such kind of disturbance. To get them back on their feet, I even volunteered to assist them in locating a reasonably priced apartment or chip in for a few months. However, that was insufficient. Jenny burst out, calling me jealous of their adventurous lifestyle and selfish. I was starting to lose it now. This was about limits, not about jealously. They made rash decisions. Hence, I owed them nowhere to live. And Jenny drew the ultimate card, that which got our parents involved, just as I felt things couldn't get much worse. Bless their hearts, my folks live in a little apartment and could not possibly house Jenny's family. That did not stop them, though, from mounting the pressure, emphasizing the value of family and pushing me to be more compassionate. My mother began with the guilt trip. "You don't understand the value of experiences," she would add, as if my life were somehow less significant since I hadn't sold all my belongings and gallivanted around the globe. I tried to reason with her, telling her I had given support, that I was ready to aid them financially, but they wanted the complete shebang. Free rent, my house, my space for over a year. And the worst of all is, they hardly intended to settle down later on either. They still discussed leaving on more excursions should they come upon reasonable discounts. Basically, they intended to live their free-spirited way while using my house as a rent-free base camp. Everything about the matter was ridiculous. Not only was Jenny ignoring me now, but my parents were disappointed in me, and even some of my friends were supporting them, claiming I was too critical. I thought I might go crazy. It was not as though I were dragging them to the curb. I had volunteered, only not the sort they preferred. I began to wonder whether I was the insane one. 1 week following the first conversation, Jenny and Alex decided to drop me a surprise visit. With their children in tow and all smiles and hopeful eyes, they arrived at my house as if this were a little annoyance we could readily fix. Jenny started modest chat, but the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I could see what was ahead. Alex asked the topic at last after an eternity of awkward politeness. "We have been considering your phone call comments." Jenny seized control. "We know you said it wouldn't work, but we genuinely feel we can make it work. 10 months from now is all, there won't be any disturbance. The children are decent. They will remain out of your path and we will keep things neat." I almost laughed. 2 small children living in my modest dwelling are out of my path, not even a possibility. And the theory that they wouldn't disturb my life was ridiculous. Still composed, I asked what their strategy was following the 10 months. Jenny said, "We're still figuring that part out," vaguely. "Should everything go as planned, we might return to travel. Simply spoken, we need somewhere to gather. You know, unrealizable." They were broke, 2 children, and still dreamers of flying to far-off places. I attempted to explain, as gently as I could, that the layout bothered me. It was about my life, my schedule, my want for calm, not about space. At that, Jenny's facade fell apart, with crossed arms. "Are you serious?" she asked. "Our family is here. Families look out for one another. You are alone. You have all this room. What's the main issue?" I was now growing irritated. They behaved as like they belonged in my space, just because we were connected. "It's not just about space, Jenny," I tried to clarify. "It relates also to my life. I need my own solitude and worked hard for my place, although I would be pleased to assist in various capacities, having you all live here for over a year. Simply spoken, I cannot see that working." Suggesting they could help around the house, cook meals, and be out throughout the day, Alex sought to be peacemaker, but the notion of them being out during the day with 2 little children and no money seemed ridiculous. I gave my head a shake. "I value the offer. However, no." Simply said, "I am not able. Apologues." And at that, Jenny totally lost it. She went into a frenzy about how I had always been frugal and how I lacked understanding of what it meant to really live. She charged me of being a dull man with a dull existence and of being jealous of their exciting way of living. I was now really furious, but I attempted to cool off. "Jenny, this is not about my jealousy. It's on limits. You decided to move this way and sell your house. Good, but it's unfair that you suddenly want me to answer for it." Alex joined in, charging me of being self-serving and of never being present for them. He pulled up previous unimportant disputes and old grudges. They seemed to be clutching all this resentment, waiting for the ideal chance to let it fly. Everyone yelled and the children started to weep as the debate got more heated. I was being presented as the merciless villain right in my house. And at last, I had had enough. "Enough!" I screamed. "I've decided, and this is my house. I'm not having any change of opinion. You should now probably be leaving." Jenny stared at me incredulous, then grabbed the children and bolted, Alex following her with a hateful gaze. I had both a pang of shame and a flood of relief. I understood this was not the end of it. As I expected, that confrontation had quick and severe consequences. Jenny seems to have a natural theatrical bent. She entered hyperdrive and painted me as the merciless villain who had turned his back on his own family. First were the whispers, the worried phone calls from relatives who had just heard Jenny's version of the story. It then arrived the Facebook post, a public humiliation outlining how the rich brother had turned away from helping his needy sister and her kids. People I hadn't spoken to in years weighing in to criticize my seeming selfishness in the comment area was like a feeding frenzy. My blood boiled. Based on a distorted story, I was being crushed in the court of public opinion. I tried to ignore the internet drama, to reason with myself, but the unfairness of it all bit at me. At last, I took a picture. I wrote my own Facebook post outlining the facts, defending my side of the events, and stressing Jenny and Alex's reckless behavior. Consequently, an all-out conflict in the part on comments. People sided, disputes erupted, and the whole thing turned into a digital garbage fire. Of course, Jenny exacerbated things more, sending a flood of insults and accusations in private conversations. It didn't escape me the irony of her calling me out for embarrassing her following her public attack. My dad called just as I was thinking the dust was clearing. Though he wasn't screaming, his dissatisfaction was evident, and somehow, it was worse. Having seen the Facebook fiasco, he was ashamed that I had publicly displayed our family's dirty laundry. He exhorted me to right things, to provide Jenny and Alex somewhere to live, to bring the family back together. I at last came to my breaking point at that, my voice firm. "Dad," I responded, "I'm not doing it. I am done apologizing. I am not going to let them live with me. I have behaved perfectly. They made decisions, now they have to live with the results. I'm not their safety net. My role is not to solve their problems." On the other end of the telephone, the quiet was deafening. I had never before stood up to my dad in that manner. He added at last, "I hope you know what you're doing, Brian," then hung up. The result was a wary stalemate. On social media, Jenny blocked me. My parents hardly spoke with me. The family seemed split, the bits strewn and permanently destroyed. Still, I stood firm. I had established a limit, and I refused to be harassed across it. Of course, the guilt stayed with you. There were evenings when I stayed awake, wondering if I could have somehow averted the aftermath or handled things better. Still, deep down, I felt I had done the right thing. I had guarded my right to say no, my sanity, my space. Sure, the encounter left scars. However, it also imparted a useful lesson on the need of limits and the bravery to defend myself, even if it meant running into the criticism of people closest to me. At last, I selected my own peace of mind and well-being. Even if the journey was rough and the expenses were considerable, I came out of the rubble with a fresh respect of self-worth and a better awareness of what it really meant to defend your own territory.